Jinwoo, but all he heard was sorry. He ran off and threw the rest of Jinwoo to his death, dumbfounded by such an act he certainly didn't expect. The gate was about to close and now they realized that everyone had to leave but one person would stay and sacrifice himself. So it was decided that Jinwoo and Madame Cheol would leave together and Mr. Song would stay, but as soon as Cheol wanted to get up, her legs they did not obey her. It was because of the depletion of mana. She used it a lot when she healed Jinwoo. Mr. Song, help her get up. I can't walk with my leg. You are the only one who can help her. Take care of her. As soon as they left, Jinwoo was left alone. He sat by the altar and thought only that thank God he is the only one, so something will die here at least. He sat alone and was ready for the outcome. Since it came to this, I will take one of you with me, he shouted. Go ahead and attack. I am not afraid of you anymore. The guards started to attack him blow by blow and it was almost over. The only thing our hero thought about was that he changed his mind about dying. For sure he didn't want such an outcome. The last cry that was, if only I had been given one more chance. My eyes were closing, but out of nowhere an alert popped up that said you had completed all the necessary requirements of the secret brave man's mission. It was that last chance, to become a player of the system and survive, but it needed the player's permission. If you refuse, your heart will stop in 2 seconds. Jinwoo was dumbfounded, but the fact that he wanted to live did not negate the fact that he would not agree. He made a decision. The bright light woke me up, and when I opened my eyes and woke up in the hospital, I could hardly breathe. I had just died. But what was it really? Maybe it was a dream, but I started to turn my head and saw that I was in the hospital. At that time, 2 guys in suits came up to me. Turns out they were waiting for me to wake up, but I didn't realize who they were. And when they got closer, they apologized for the disturbance. It turned out to be the Korean Hunters Association. I didn't understand what they wanted from me, but when I found out I had been asleep for 3 whole days, I couldn't believe it. After that I started asking them questions about what happened to Mrs. Juhee and Mr. Song. I hoped they were safe. But these guys responded that they were fine, but that Mr. Song would now have trouble working because of one arm, and from then on, if he wanted to, he could retire. And Juhee, being a hunter, is still being treated for psychological trauma, and it is not clear to them now whether they will remain hunters. As soon as they started looking for other hunters like sick, I interrupted them and told them that was enough. I had heard everything I wanted to hear, and I didn't need any more. But the man went on to tell me that only 6 people had survived after visiting the double cave. Although hunters are always in danger when hunting, this kind of carnage doesn't happen very often. When the Hunters Association and the White Tiger Guild arrived on the scene, they had all disappeared, and there was only me lying on the altar in the cave. Neither the statues nor what the others described were found. We have been unable to find an explanation for what happened, but this is only a theory. However, these guys believe that I went through a rebirth. I certainly couldn't believe it, because a hunter's stats are set when he doesn't get the awakening or the power. Some hunters can get awakening again and rise in rank. But these guys brought with them a gauge of magical power, and all I had to do was put my hand on the crystal. If these were the high-level, deadly monsters the survivors had told me about, ordinary hunters would not be able to handle them. Only rank units or S ranks could make a difference. But when they put their hand on the crystal, all these monsters simply disappeared. Then they suspected that Hunter Song Jinwoo had been reawakened, since he was the only surviving hunter. But after I got my hand in, they thought I was trash, and because the lowest E rank is at least 70, and I turned out to have 10. After that, the man said they suspected me for no reason, and they left. When they walked out the door, I didn't realize that they hadn't noticed what was right above my bed hung a notification system that had a message. I turned my attention to my leg, and it was in place, even though it had been completely cut off. And there was nothing wrong with my pierced breast. I couldn't tell the difference between this dream and reality and wondered, should I have told them what I was seeing in front of me now? And it certainly wasn't a touch screen. But at one point my sister came into my room and asked me what I was doing, because I was just standing on the bed poking my finger in the air. She asked me how I was feeling. And after that she immediately jumped on me, because she was telling me not to get hurt again, because she was very worried about me. She kept yelling, "What about the others, is everything okay? So why am I the only one who got hurt?" But I was in my own thoughts and couldn't believe I almost left her. I didn't think I'd made it out of that dream. But that message spoke back to me. I asked my sister if she was seeing what I was seeing, but she didn't understand what I was starting to say. I told her that when there was an unread message in play, how could I read it? She didn't understand what I was talking about, but seeing my message, that I had become a player and had a daily task to become stronger. I didn't understand what it was all about. A little later my sister came out of my room and along with her girlfriend started to leave. I started reading my alerts. It said that the system would help the player grow. If he disobeyed the orders of the system, he could be punished. And I also had some rewards, but I couldn't figure out what they were telling me. Well, for a second I thought I saw something similar when I was lying on the altar. The first thing that interested me was that I saw a message about the daily prepare to get stronger challenge. I decided to check it out and opened this message. Inside were the instructions for the quest and its purpose was to work out, push-ups, abs, and squats, as well as exercise and running. However, below was a warning that if I didn't complete the daily quest, I would be sent to the village instantly as punishment. But I thought it was some kind of joke, so I decided to continue lying down and resting, only to find out about everything after a good night's sleep. However, I suddenly woke up to the fact that my bed started jumping in different directions, as if an earthquake was about to start. In an instant, I found myself in some kind of desert. I couldn't believe my eyes, because I thought I was dreaming. But when I turned my head, I saw a giant poisonous centipede looking right at me and wanting to eat me. Immediately after that I got the quest instructions, and the penalty task stated that I needed to survive in 4 hours. But for me, that was something horrible. I was running away on all my feet, for I was trying to survive in strict accordance with the mission, but the monsters were chasing me the whole time. They jumped out of all the barcons and sands that were near me. But once 4 hours passed and I got my alert, I managed to survive. I finally finished my adventure and at one point found myself in my hospital room. I jumped out of bed like the ground was sandy and fell to the floor, just as I did. I was terribly exhausted, for I had been running for 4 hours from the horrible monsters that were chasing me. When I was finally able to raise my head, I saw a notification that said that my reward for completing the punishing task had been received and I could take it. However, I was so exhausted that I immediately fell asleep. At the same moment a nurse came into my room and saw that I was lying beside my bed. There was a lot of sand around me. She immediately started calling for help. The next day, this nurse was telling her colleague if she knew of a patient named Jinwoo. She had heard that there was such a hunter who was now resting in their hospital. But it turns out that he runs every day, even though it has been several days since he woke up. The doctor said that hunters heal faster than ordinary people, so light exercise is helpful. But when they looked out the window, they saw that I was still running. But I was running and I didn't realize what all this easy exercise was, and I didn't realize if it was good that I was doing it. But I had been running for almost 4 hours since I woke up, and there were a few things I managed to learn. The first is that the thing in front of my eyes is not an illusion. For I can clearly see with my own eyes, though no one else can. And when I finally completed the last quest, the 10K run, I got my reward for the quest and was able to pick one of the cells. It was a status recovery, and at one point I got magic that could heal my fatigue after training. The fatigue that didn't make them all in my body actually disappeared, as if it hadn't happened at all. Also, I still had stats and random boxes, and I can improve any character trait until I run out of points. I get stronger when I increase a player's stats, and this level up does the same thing. Yes, and the skill status, inventory, and stored items all felt like a game. I never figured out what was really going on, but at this point in my characteristics I was level A. My strength was 10, intelligence 10, dexterity 10, perception 10, and toughness 10. I still had 3 points left that I could use. In the evening, I went to the front desk and asked if I could leave tonight, as I had some business to take care of outside. A little later I found myself outside the subway entrance, and it was time to find out what this thing was in my hands. After all, every time a random box appeared after completing a daily task, sometimes it contained unnecessary items. But what I was holding in my hands was something else entirely. It was a key that allows me to instantly create a dungeon, and I can use it in the third entrance to Hair Station. This key allows me to instantly create a dungeon, and I wondered if this could all be because of an overactivation or possible overactivation procedure. But if it was, I should try it, because finally the weakest hunter in the world gets overactivated. Others would have laughed upon hearing this, but I was confident in my ability to escape, and if it was as dangerous as the last time, I would escape despite all obstacles. As soon as I inserted the key, a portal opened, into which I immediately entered. As soon as I stepped out of the portal, I was notified that I had entered an instant dungeon. However, the entrance behind my back instantly closed, and suddenly a girl walked beside me, just passing by. I realized that it was some other dimension, because it didn't look like a normal dungeon, and I had never seen anything like it before. Perhaps it must be like a red gate. Now I didn't know what to do, because I was planning to run away if something went wrong. If the exit had closed, I couldn't get out of here. A little later I got a notification that I couldn't leave the dungeon until I killed the boss. It was kind of weird, since it had been days since I had fought Erang monsters. And now I had to clear all the dungeons myself. I had a strange feeling inside, as if someone was mocking me. After all, they were seriously counting on me to be able to deal with this without a team. I guess I overestimated my capabilities. After all, I seriously thought I could handle it without the group. But when I started to move on, I saw that everything around me was destroyed, as if an apocalypse had occurred. I kept walking, but I felt less and less confident, because there was a strong ominous atmosphere all around me. It was a monster running right at me. I saw some monster leap at me, but I managed to dodge it, and it rushed past me. And when I turned around, I saw a wolf in front of me. It was Riken's steel fang. I realized that even 1 or 2 goblins was hard for me. Could I defeat a monster as terrible as him? After all, he was much stronger than I was, and much bigger. And at that moment I felt that my legs stopped listening to me, and I simply could not move. It was all because I was afraid and I was too scared. I didn't think I had suffered any serious psychological trauma at the time, but the monster kept attacking me. It would have bitten my leg off just a little more, but I successfully jumped aside. I didn't have a healer at the moment, and I couldn't afford to get hurt. In an instant, the monster was already near my head. A little more and it would have bitten it off, but my body was so light that I successfully dodged it. I was very surprised, because this had never happened to me before. And then I realized that I was much stronger than I'd been before. I looked straight into his eyes, and barely saved my life. Now I would not tremble with fear, I would fight. I swung and struck that wolf with my hand, which made it fly away and make a hole in the nearest fence. I was surprised at how strong I was, and realized it was probably because of my improved strength. But the Riken's steel fang was still stronger than me. I kept hitting him as he got closer to me. Right up close. And, just as I thought, the usual attacks had no effect on him, and even this monster was stronger than me. This became a problem for me, and I didn't know what to do. After all, it was too hard for me alone, and this wolf managed to hurt me. I realized that I could not defeat it by myself or with the help of a group, healers, or equipment. I had nothing left after that. I began to think what it would take for me to defeat such a powerful monster, and all I had was my body, a weapon with magical power. And if only I had a weapon. But, sure, I had inventory. And as soon as I thought about the inventory, it immediately opened up, and the only thing I had there was a sword, and I was able to get it right out of the inventory. I didn't understand why it was there, but that was the least of my worries, for I now had the most terrifying opponent in front of me, and with a single blow I cut the wolf in half. It was the blade that Master Kim had left in the double fang. My level was elevated. I remembered that Mr. Kim had bought it for 3 million won. It was too expensive for me, because I couldn't afford such a weapon. But now I am going to use it. This inventory I have turned out to be quite a handy thing. After all, I can store anything I want in here. Ever since I got the gun, I'm no longer afraid of those horrible monsters coming right at me. But suddenly I realized that I couldn't lift this sword off the ground. I started pulling it with all my might. Behind me were 2 horrible wolves, coming closer and closer. Finally, I was able to move it and hit one of the wolves. The other wolf grabbed my sword with its iron steel fangs, and then I realized that it was called Steel Fang for a reason. But I could not let Mr. Kim's sword go to waste, and in the end, I was able to chop that wolf in two. Now that I think about it, those wolves compared to those monsters are too weak for me. Now I can overpower them all and survive at all costs by becoming much stronger. After I defeated those two wolves, I found a secluded spot and sat on the ground and pondered. It seems that when I level up, all my characteristics increase by 1 point, and completing a daily task earns me 3 points. Leveling up means that all my characteristics increase by 1. Right now I have 5 points, and I'm wondering how much stronger I can get. Monster hunting and leveling up seem to be the most effective. I wanted to see how much I could improve my characteristics. Even my intelligence and perception can be expressed in numbers, but the important thing is to understand my strength. It has only increased by 10 points, but I already feel an improvement. Is it possible that my characteristics will still improve? Anyway, I understand that I can get stronger as my level increases. Having just defeated 2 monsters, I wondered why the magic cores hadn't fallen off them. After all, I thought all the monsters in the dungeon had such cores. It seemed to be a separate kind of monster. Suddenly an interesting thought occurred to me: if I am under the control of the game system, then probably both the dungeon and these monsters are created by a special system. Perhaps that's why items rather than magic cores fall off of them. After all, I was able to get Ryan's Fang, which turned out to be quite large, and now I can keep it in my inventory or sell it in the store. But when I tried to sell it, the notification showed that my level wasn't high enough to make the purchase. Beginners can't seem to use this feature. I was offered 20 gold coins for this Fang, and I don't even know how much it's really worth, since it's virtual money. But it looks like this dungeon is supposed to be high level, E rank, and it's probably not worth it. I had to decide what to do now, because I can't leave until I beat the boss. I could leave if I got the return crystal, but I don't know if that would even happen. Besides, I'll soon run out of food, even if the boss is too strong to fight him alone. However, it should become possible if I level up a little more, but then I might die before I even encounter him. So I decided that I would destroy any monsters that came near me, and then I would go straight to the boss and deal with him for what it was worth to me. I have nothing to fear, for I have already died once, and I will not let it happen a second time. I destroyed every wolf that came my way, and each time there were more and more. But as soon as my level rose and stopped, I became even stronger and killed them with ease. For I had decided that I would not give up so easily. So these wolves must not die too easily either, or I would feel sorry for them. I must fight fiercely, as hard as my body can take it. Finally, I realized that if I didn't leave here, I would be killed. Gradually, as I leveled up, I realized that if I died, I wouldn't be able to protect the people I cared about. In the end, I would lose everything I had. I can't just put my hands down like a weakling if I can get stronger. I will even follow these absurd rules, just to survive and keep moving forward, protecting everything I hold dear. And when I have dealt with all the wolves that were in my way, I thought that would be the end of it. In the next hallway, I saw more wolves coming right at me. I was having a hard time, and my body almost didn't listen to me. I knew I could win and continue on my way. Well, at one point during the battle I realized that the blade of my blade was completely blunt, and it would eventually lose its strength. Even if I bought a high-end weapon, it would inevitably become the same when I went down into the dungeon a few more times. There was one occasion when I bought a dagger that cost over 50,000 won. Although it became much easier to hunt, the dagger still broke easily in a boss battle, and I got 3 magic crystals that day. But I still couldn't afford to buy weapons, even though it was exhausting. I decided that I would take care of them one by one using my body. I was grateful for this blade, for it had saved my life more than once today. In the end, I received the title of Wolf Killer. This title is awarded to a hunter who skillfully fights wolves. It increases experience against beast-type monsters by 40%. I was able to get 34 wolf fangs and 2 worn daggers, a traveler's clothing and a return stone. It was more than I expected, but this return stone was too tempting. I didn't know if I should go back, but there was no guarantee that there would be another chance to get stronger so easily. And what would happen to this dungeon after I used the return stone? Will it just disappear? If it's some sort of system-created limited event, then it's very real. And I end up dancing, palm splashing, something I don't know myself. Like a dance on the palm of the Buddha's hand, I stood and pondered whether I should go on or just back off. But at the end, I put the stone back in my inventory and headed forward. After all, I wanted to get stronger, and with each step I was able to raise my level higher and higher. When I fight monsters, I feel a little better and I definitely feel like I'm getting stronger. Unlike normal dungeons where monsters are reborn, these creatures don't feel alive. So fighting them is more like a game where their character is determined. If I can learn their behavior, I can understand where they come from. Perhaps there is a monkey on top and a cat on all sides. I fought them all alone, and was able to defeat them all. For I am much stronger now than before. I'm different now. As they attack me, if a month ago I would have died a long time ago, but now I know how to behave in such situations. In this case, the color of their name changes depending on their strength. White means weak, orange means strong, and red means very strong. At first the color of the Riken's name was orange, but now it's white and I'm a little stronger. But even with the strength I have now, I'm not sure I can beat that guy. Now I started getting goosebumps when I saw the smoke heading one way, and it's probably due to the increase in my sensitivity, and I can appreciate how powerful the monster is down there. My level doesn't seem to be rising anymore. Besides, my sword won't last long if I fight in vain. Finally, I decided that I needed to go down and see for myself what was waiting for me down there. I kept going down, and I realized that the stairs had gotten longer, and it was a real subway station. And when I finally made it down the stairs, I saw this strange place. And suddenly something fast started rushing right at me, and before I could even blink, something hit me hard with its big tail. But I managed to parry this blow with my sword, but I was still thrown back into the nearest wall, which hit me very hard and made me bleed. I sat and stared at the terrifying monster, and suddenly something fast started rushing right at me, and before I could even blink, something hit me hard with its big tail. But I managed to parry this blow with my sword, but I was still thrown into the nearest wall, which hit me very hard and made me bleed. I sat and stared at the terrifying monster. I stood in front of this horrible monster and looked him straight in the eye. At that moment I realized that the sword could not pierce it, and the blows would have no effect. I need to figure out how to deal with him quickly, because I'm almost out of time. The monster kept attacking, and I realized that I needed a very quick full weight attack. At the same time, I have to weaken this guy's defense. But I have to decide how I'm going to deal with this thick scales. After all my attacks could not penetrate his thick scales, and something had to be done about it. I tried to dodge and defend myself, but I would have died if he had hit me with a straight punch. However, in the end he managed to hit me several times, causing me to be very badly hurt and fall to the ground. Was this the end I had been walking toward all my life? I thought I'd gotten a lot stronger, but it wasn't enough. And how strong would I have to get to kill a monster like that? After all, to escape my past, I am the weakest hunter in the whole world. There had been such rumors about me lately. I remembered being told that there seemed to be people who do such things for fun, and I need to make more of an effort to stop these rumors. This nickname stuck to me because I'm too weak, but I shouldn't brag about my weakness. For I myself know how weak I am, and it is a force that clutches my head and can make me back down. Even false pretenses cannot protect me. And whatever the enemy does, the sheer force of me and fear will make my knees bend and my toes dig into the ground. I am ignored because I am weak or have not been thanked before the force. I thought back to that very day when many men and good hunters died, but I stayed alive. So I have to survive right now. If it is easy to be betrayed, then I must become stronger. For this is where I must overcome all obstacles, and no matter what, I will recover and continue my journey to reach my goals that await me. For I must become even stronger, and all the monsters in my path will fall. Compared to this monster and the fear I felt then, I am completely calm now. Even if there is a monster in front of me that surpasses me in strength, I will still be able to deal with it. I grabbed hold of this big family's neck and wouldn't let it go. I squeezed her as hard as I could, but she resisted me. There were every wall around us that could be. I was choking her with all my strength and screaming for her to die soon. Eventually she began to suffocate. At this time in the hospital, the doctor was asking if I was back in my room. He was wondering why I hadn't come back even after the sun went down. But the nurse at the front desk said that I was almost healthy and would be discharged soon. But the doctor wasn't sure about the hunters, and they should stabilize me in that room, because he had heard it said that high-class hunters, rich and broad class, don't get much money and are in constant danger. And he didn't understand why we were doing such a job. After all, it's horrible to watch the conditions in which hunters work, and it was interesting what they do inside the dungeon. The veterans they get is abnormal. They are covered in blood completely on another level from patients who get into accidents, and it was amazing that they are still alive in these conditions. But the nurse thought it was a miracle since they were able to return from the dungeon, but the doctor said he disagreed, for even the weakest hunters are strong compared to ordinary people. Correct the text for errors, because you can assume they are the same as those monsters in the dungeons. At this time I was finally able to kill that monster, and a notification showed me that I had upgraded. I finally sighed, and now I was sure that I was a little stronger than I had been before. If the next alert showed that I had killed the ruler of the swamp, the blue venomous dewclaw fawn, I could be rewarded with bottles of purified dewclaw venom. It can be obtained by killing a dewlap, and there is a slim chance of its skin falling out, which will become stronger. It will, however, weaken my strength. I also got a dagger made from a dewclaw fawn, and it can paralyze because of the venom on the blade. It gives the effect of bleeding, and I can carry it with me, keep it, or sell it. My clothes were torn to shreds, and my sword was also broken. My whole body was torn like a lat ball, but I finally got a better blade than the one Mr. Kim had. This dagger was made of fang, not bone, and it had twice the attack characteristics of my last blade. It also has the effect of paralyzing and bleeding. At the time I decided to sell it, I received a new notification that the boss had been killed and the interior of the dungeon would return to its normal state. I looked up and saw everything around me start to disappear, and it was finally over. I started to go to the surface, and I wondered what time it was. But as soon as I got to the top, I saw a soldier, and he started asking me questions about how I was able to get out of there and why I hadn't heard about the transmission. I didn't understand what happened, but when he saw my sword and my shabby clothes, he realized I was a hunter and immediately apologized to me. He said he would see me off, but I wondered what had happened here. After all, there was devastation everywhere and a pile of dead monsters. I realized that a gate had probably opened nearby, and all those monsters were coming out of there. The soldier told me not to worry, those monsters that were nearby had already been destroyed, only one big monster was left on the left. Because of my sensitivity I could feel. I saw a bright light not far away. It was a boss, and besides, it was very big. A lot of hunters were fighting him, the likes of tanks, and the likes of ranged hunters, archers and mages. At this time, the soldiers asked not to take pictures of it all and to leave the area immediately. But they were interested in what the hunters were doing and how long they would fight. After all, I want them to deal with it as quickly as possible, but at this time the battle of the hunters was very fast, and some were wounded because of it. Some hunters were screaming for a quick cure for the tank that was holding back the boss's attacks, but all the hunters who were nearby could handle him, because his defense was very strong. And they didn't have that many mages who could handle him. I realized that the mistakes arose because they had only recently been summoned, and also because of their lack of effectiveness as a team. Their too little guy won't be able to do damage since he is a tank. It's a battle of attrition, and healers can't handle such serious wounds. But suddenly I saw that girl Jinwoo that I recently went through a double dungeon with. She was a B-rank healer and was helping these guys at the moment. However, something strange was going on with her, as she was trying to help, but remembered the horror she had recently gone through. She did not want to back down, for after that she could not go back. And even after a week she still hadn't overcome it, and that was to be expected. After all, I have to overcome it too, and the boss around D-rank compared to the boss I fought before is one rank lower. If I can weaken his defense, I can beat him, because I need a punch that will penetrate that stupid rock. I gathered all my strength and threw my blade with all my speed. It flew straight at the head. At this time, the hunters who had been fighting the boss realized that if this continued, they would die. They should only hope that a hunter of rank above them would come, and the tank in front of them might die. At this rate. And at that moment my sword flew to the target, and the boss was killed. But the hunters who fought him thought they were the ones who killed him. The hunters kept attacking him, but the boss was already disintegrating, for he was destroyed by my sword, which I threw. Finally,